All right, Ike. So this week in the news, Land Rover Discovery, brand new model that is coming out. In Land Rover's seemingly never-ending search for new models, they've come up with the Land Rover Neapolitan, which is neat because the paint is divided in three different colors. You have a pink, a white, and then a brown. And it looks pretty cool.
I think you're referring to the Metropolitan Edition, and I gotta say, I had already written out that joke, and I'm disappointed that you stole it from me. But I'm glad that
you do it.
I'm glad we're thinking alike. Yeah, this Metropolitan Edition, it's a little bit upscale new Discovery, I should say, and it features some metallic gray, classy,
yes,
understated sort of paint and some trim accessories. Tell me a little bit more about it. What do you know?
Yeah, I mean, it seems as though they are really building this one out to be specifically the sort of urban, again, the metro. It's unclear. You can kind of go either way. The metro version of the Discovery, much more city-focused, much less sort of adventure-focused. And I wonder, do you think that's because the Defender is starting to sort of eat away at the adventure side of what you would have bought a Discovery for traditionally, if you were out there purchasing a Land Rover utility vehicle, more for its utility than for its sport? And now that the Discovery is sort of needing to move a little more into the metro urban kind of space in order to kind of try to eke out some market share.
Yeah, they probably can't call it the suburban, so this kind of makes sense. Also, there's a little bit of a tie-in with the, I guess maybe the Metropolitan Police who use Discoveries. At least I've seen some pictures of them using Discoveries in their sort of white and neon green and orange and blue, I think, livery.
Yeah. I saw a fire department recently that had decked out the fire rescue groups that they have in the UK that had decked out a new Defender in the sort of same livery as the classic, fire rescue Defenders, and it looked pretty cool. And I've definitely seen some discos that are done up in the police and fire rescue stuff. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, it makes sense, where we have a Ford Explorer here as the sort of standard police vehicle now, right? They don't even do cars anymore; they only do the SUVs. I suppose it's sort of similar, although very upmarket, I would think, for a Metropolitan police force, unless it's a very fancy one, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't have import duties, so maybe they can afford to use those cars for that purpose. But certainly, historically, Metropolitan Police have used Discoveries in the past. But I think you're right. They're trying to separate the two cars, at least from a consumer perspective, trying to give that adventure, ruggedness flair towards the Defender, and then maybe move the Discovery a little bit upmarket in these sorts of special editions.
Yeah. It's yet another special edition Land Rover that sort of satisfies 1% of the potential market.
I think the total list of special editions, hang on, let me check my notes here. It's actually 179 different special editions, Land Rovers of various flavors.
When you go to Land Rover's website under Special Edition, you scroll for 2.5 hours to get to the bottom of that page.
And that's just the first page.
Just the first page. There's 7 more after that. So it's a week well spent looking through all of the different special editions. It's only a matter of time until we manage to convince them to do an Underpowered Hour edition, which will only feature a very high-end sound system that only has our catalog of podcasts. You can't play anything else. That's all that is available. I was corresponding with one of our listeners last weekend, and he said, "Oh yeah, I listened to a bunch of your shows on a trip from wherever I was back to wherever he was going." And he said, "In a lot of countries, that's like punishment for stealing or something." But, I'm glad that you enjoyed.
It took 4 hours to get there, and it felt like it took 8 coming back.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an easy way to elongate time in a very unnatural way, which is how we build this this show to advertisers. Ike, speaking of incredibly long and arduous journeys and ways to make them even feel even longer, you, over the past 2 weekends, give or take, have been collecting vehicles from all over the western part of the United States. So I thought it might be interesting if we did a new segment called What Do You Do? Which at some point we will get a clip from Speed. We're going to license that clip. But you have a bus traveling at 90 miles an hour, and if you let off the throttle, it'll explode. In that sort of vein, you have a brand new Land Rover that you just picked up from some, willing, maybe unwilling person's driveway, although almost always willing, let's be honest. And what do you do with that car? First of all, how do you drive something like that home? If you were thinking about doing that, what are the things that you go through? And then finally, once you have it home and it's ready to sort of start, being used or getting ready for restoration, what are some of the first things that you address on a car?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. And I will say I do not recommend that anyone does this because it's a terrible idea and it's unpleasant and most people would find it excruciating. So,
but in continuing efforts to die in some kind of horrific automotive vehicular manslaughter, self-imposed, Yeah,
we always knew it was going to happen. It was just a question of when. But in this particular case, I had looked at a Land Rover pickup truck, 1966. And when I say look at it, I looked at some photographs of it.
Right.
And it was in California, which is normally a great place to buy Land Rovers because they're rust-free, generally speaking, Land Rovers that have been here for a long time. And I liked this one. It was straight and it was, original looking in the photographs. But as often happens, when you get someplace, you find that maybe you were looking at this or a vehicle with rose-colored glasses. So there were a lot of issues with this car, and driving it back was definitely not a good idea. So you're probably familiar with that scene in Ghostbusters where... you're probably familiar with that scene in Ghostbusters where Ray comes up and he's like, look, I got us a car. It just needs, a radiator and tires and a windshield and the rebuilt engine and a transmission and an oil change and shocks and, all the stuff. And this car was kind of that car. And so we got there. I caught a ride with a friend of mine and brought my bag of tools and my spares and, a tarp and, all the things that you normally bring for a car ride, like a pressure gas lantern and, just all the stuff that you bring on any car ride.
At least this one's a pickup truck and you don't have to lash it all to the outside of a motorcycle.
Yeah. And it had a canvas on the back, which I later would find out is completely not weather tight or watertight at all.
Oh, good to know. Yeah.
So we get there and I guess I should have known the Land Rover was parked directly across from the ocean. So this is a car that 1 year ago was in nice condition when I saw the photographs for the first time. Really pretty nice car. And in the intervening year, it had been bathed in daily salt water and fog. And so all the exposed fasteners and surfaces had accumulated surface rust and white powdery stuff on the galvanizing. And like the underhood was all like scaly and, the radiators all green, all the copper on the radiators all green. So it's kind of gnarly to look at initially, like it's not heavily corroded. There aren't holes in it, but it's just like definitely looks like it's been dredged up out of the ocean, not what I had envisioned,
Right.
And so I was like, oh, well, cosmetically, it needs a lot of cleanup, a lot of cleaning and polishing and oiling. But really, I think the important things for anybody to look at when you're evaluating a vehicle to drive home, which almost no one does. People buy Land Rovers off the internet and they ship them home because they don't want to go through the sorts of things that I go through, which is, like you said, self-imposed, but also miserable. So at any rate, at any rate, you got to check all the fluids, so it was important to check all the fluids, the steering box and the steering relay and swivel balls and axles and transmission transfer case. I think typically the overlooked things are the steering. People are pretty good about putting some oil in the engine, and they're less good about putting oil in the transmission and transfer case because it's more of a hassle. But and same goes with the axles. But almost never does the steering box have oil in it. It is leaked out decades ago, and no one has replaced it. So this particular car...
And the steering relay, I think a lot of people don't even know oil goes in there, as there's no filler per se.
That's true. That's true. We often find that people are like, oh, my steering is so stiff. And they're like, have you checked the oil? And they're like, what? So you're right. That's often overlooked. And in this particular case, that was true. All those reservoirs had been overlooked. None of them had oil in them. The engine was 2 quarts low, and the radiator was 1 gallon low. And so the guy he bought it and he drove his kids down to the beach every week or two. And that's really all the use it's seen. And, it did run, but it was questionable. And then we drove it around the neighborhood and we tried to drive it up this relatively steep hill in this neighborhood, and the engine increased in RPM, but the speed decreased.
That's never a good sign. Never a good sign.
So the clutch was totally hosed in this car, and I was like, oh, well, that's it. I can't drive it, But I decided to anyway.
Right. Yeah. Why would that stop you?
Also, there was a broken leaf spring, and the muffler was hanging off by missing some brackets, and some of the electrical stuff worked, but most of it needed some fooling with. So it was quickly getting dark by the time we got there, and we agreed on a somewhat lower price than the original asking price, and I decided that instead of bothering my brother and leaving it at his house in the Bay Area, I would attempt to drive it all the way home. And if I didn't, I would either have it go off a cliff or get a tow truck or whatever to get it home. So that's how I proceeded. I made it about 110 miles the first evening, and I had to stop 13 times.
Oh yeah.
So I had to fix the wipers and the heater and the lights, and most of that stuff, came back to life pretty easily. There's all the fuses and fuse block were all corroded, and the timing was off, and the little vernier screw on the distributor wouldn't advance. And anyway, I won't bore you with every stop, but needless to say, it required some tinkering, but I made it to this really excellent, one of my favorite camping spots on the California coast. It is a section of Highway 1 that has been closed for 50 years. They just gated it off, and, the road goes by the, gate, and I managed to guess the code
again. Still have done
again. And so
we don't have any members of the California, I guess, parks and
who knows,
division or whatever. Who knows? But anyways, they're not listeners. So until that time, you're fine. You're good.
Great guerrilla camping spot. Great guerrilla camping spot. I love it. So I camped there for the evening, and then subjected myself to 17 hours more driving yesterday with many stops for various fluids and batteries and things that would keep a car like that going. And I find the easiest way to drive a car like that is to pretend as if there's an egg between the accelerator pedal and your foot. And you're trying not to break it because you step on it a little too much, and then the clutch wants to slip. So I managed to nurse it up and down all the hills, and it slipped some, but I was careful. Lots of
like a DeWalt drill set to 1.
Set to 1. Yes.
Really not that useful.
Totally. But to its credit, it made it the entire way, and I didn't die. It was touch and go there for a minute. There were some angry semi-truck drivers and these sorts of things. Sure. Definitely some angry Tacoma drivers on the Highway 1. They seem to be the angriest. I don't know why. Their trucks never break down.
Well, because they have a Tacoma. It's, they're like, there's no joy in that.
The title of this segment was "What do you do when you're looking at a new Land Rover?" Or what, and this is kind of an anecdote of what we would do, but. I think there's two kinds of cars, right? There's really reliable cars, and then there's cars that the driver is reliable, so they just keep going forever. And I tend to be in that second category. Because I managed to buy all these cars sight unseen, and then instead of towing them back like so many other shops would do, like Land Rover Heaven. He's got his Isuzu cab over NPR truck, and he just like very comfortably tows them back, listening to some sort of book on tape. I just want to drive them all back.
When I got the Camel Trophy truck from France, there was a port strike on in Vancouver, and I managed to negotiate with the port of Vancouver to let me go and get this car out of this container. And so that's when the shipping company said, well, actually, there's another gentleman that we doubled up your crate with. And I'm like, oh, great. And they're like, but it just so happens that he was in a little earlier and tried to convince us of the same thing. Here's his information. If you two can work it out between yourselves to get them both out, we can see if the port will let you land the crate. So I find Mike, who had bought a Mercedes fire truck that he was going to turn into a food truck.
Oh, right on.
And so Mike and I go down to the port, and he's like, I have no idea if this is going to start or there's going to be air in the tires or anything. So we stop at the parts store and get a battery. He has a trailer. But the winch on his trailer doesn't have a battery. So we're also planning on just using this battery for his winch. Sure enough, we get it in. There's no way this fire truck is going to start. Sort of yanks the fire truck out of this crate. And the Discovery was there, screwed down to the, strapped up and everything. And once we finally figured out that the engine had been disconnected from the battery, we got it on. And then it was the same deal. We're just like, well, we're going to drive this vintage Camel Trophy truck that has been God knows where, basically back to California. They made a brief stop on Vancouver Island, so we stuck it on a ferry, drove it onto the ferry, and then kept it there for a little bit, and then just basically drove it down to California, and got a flat tire every morning. And we would go to, I think I've told this story before, we would go to a tire shop that morning and be like, what do you have that's close to this size? Just give us one of those, because we just put the spare on and we just need another spare because tomorrow one of these other tires is going to be flat. There's no way it isn't. And so we would just start every day. We first went and got tools to change the tire because we didn't bring any of that with us on the airplane to Vancouver. And just slowly made our way back to California, changing tires every so often, doing fluids, jump starting it more than a couple of times.
Doesn't that sound like everybody's idea of a good time?
Yeah, super fun. Great way to spend a couple days. There's no more fun than that. So slept in the Camel Trophy truck a little bit, and it's a good time though. Good time.
Yeah, it was great. The car made it, and now I've got to tear it all apart, take the motor out, take the axles apart, blah blah blah, fix all that corrosion, et cetera,
do all that sort of stuff. So what is the first thing that you do when you get you got a new car and now it's safely back with you? What are the first things that you tend to replace to make it like that? It's not worth trying to salvage something that you've just got to get in there and do, even if you're not going to restore the car for a little while, just things to make it drivable.
I mean, that does depend on the car, and every car has needs. This particular one did have a new wiring harness, but there was a lot of corrosion in the various terminals and that sort of thing. So I probably need to go through and take all those off and clean them and put some dielectric grease on and put it back together so the electrics are more reliable. And I find that's true of a lot of cars. Their wiring has generally been monkeyed with over the years, and none of that stuff works. But frequently, you can get some of the electrical stuff working, especially the important things, taillights, brake lights, etc., with some minor tinkering. And that at least makes it drivable.
I finally decided to just replace the wiring harness in the stage one. As when I turn the headlights on, it gets 50% cooler, and the gas goes half. So there's amongst other insane electrical things that are going on. And so there's so many little splices and cuts and replacements and rewires and grounds going to other grounds that then go back to the original bypasses and all sort of, it's at some point you just got to say die. And although it's a big job to do the wiring harness, it saves so much frustration.
It is very frustrating to have a car where the lights turn off when you're driving along. It's really frustrating, and it's super dangerous too. So, don't do that, and look after your wiring. So, you're absolutely right. I think that is important to get that wiring knocked out. Lucas Electrics have a reputation for being terrible, but really, it's any old car. They have. Every old car has had a slew of owners that didn't care, and they were just trying to make it work, and they did a terrible job of whatever they were trying to do. Generally, what do they call them? Spots, stupid previous owner tricks. It's an acronym for that, and no more evident anywhere on the car than in the wiring are those sorts of repairs. So, try to get those sorted out.
So a quick listener question from one of our patrons. We talked early on in one of the Camel Trophy, one of the many times we've talked about Camel Trophies on the show, about the Series 3 Camel Trophy trucks that were used for a super, super limited amount of time. And that listener asked, where did I see that Series 3 Camel Trophy truck? And unfortunately for them, the only place I've ever seen one is at a Camel Trophy sort of day event, whatever, at the British Motor Heritage Museum in Gaydon. Unfortunately, this listener is from New Zealand. So, next, unless they happen to be in the UK when one of those is going on, maybe you'll happen upon it. But it is a rare sight. I have only ever seen one in real life, and it was at an event, and in fact, it was unattended. And after attempting to steal it and contracting a pretty serious case of tetanus, the owner never showed up, and so I wasn't able to get more information about it. But
you probably got what you deserved. Those were rare. Those were rare cars. They only used them, I think, 1 or maybe 1 year, and they only had 20 cars at the time. So
and they got the shit beaten out of them. There was just nothing left, and I think a lot of them got left in. I had thought that they had all been left, but in fact, apparently one has been found, and from all inspection, it looked like an original car. It may, I suppose, have been a replica, but it was the most well-aged replica I've ever seen in my life. Then
that's pretty cool.
They took an already crazy old car and made a replica of an even crazier older car, which, hey, that's cool.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's that. On the topic of Land Rover accessories, I this week, as you know, my 80-inch only has one side mirror, and I don't like a lot of the center mirrors that are available for 80 inches. I know a lot of people retrofit in center mirrors and stuff. I always feel like it just doesn't look quite right. It's sort of there's a certain charm to having only the one side mirror off the side of the windshield frame. But I did manage to procure a suction cup rear view mirror.
Yes.
So a little suction cup rear view mirror that I stick on the windscreen now. And I have to say, it makes it, just that little bit safer to drive. That is already the least safe car you can drive. Motorcycles are safer than that car because at least you'll be thrown off in an accident. The 80-inch tends to retain you on the inside as it bursts into flame. But having a little stick on, it's going to say pretty handy.
It is pretty handy. You can often find them in the bargain section or the discount bin in your local auto parts store. They frequently turn up there for whatever reason. The kind to get is the slightly convex one, so you can really see out. But it is nice that you have no modifications. I bought one again when I bought some stupid Land Rover in some stupid place and was driving it home, and I was like, you know what? I really should have a mirror on this car, and I got one of those, and I got to say, it's still on there. I really actually like it, and because I have a reoccurring dream of a clown appearing behind me in the shower, I also installed one on the tile in my shower, and it's
just so you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. It's a fine idea, actually. I may get a whole box.
No one can sneak up on me in the shower now.
I want to say it was about $8 on Amazon, and when it was like Amazon was like, here's something you might like, and I'm like, you know what? That is something I would like. And I guess, I I mean, I know they exist. I had just never thought. I'd never put that together with the 80-inch. Knowing, again, not that I, whatever. If you have a center mirror in your 80-inch, you're more than welcome to do whatever you want. It's your car. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of overly modernizing that particular car, and so it's just a really nice compromise as I drive it on the road all the time. And I like to, that little extra being able to see behind me instead of this small, powdered compact mirror that is available on the one side of it. I suppose I could put one of those on the other side too. I have just never, done it.
Series 1s in the United States never came with rear view mirrors, and so every Series 1 I've ever had, which is a lot, probably 100 cars, and they've all had that different rear view mirror, and I really wish I had a picture of each one to make a photo collage out of, so because they're all different. My favorite is actually in a car that I recently sold, and it was an American accessory mirror, which makes sense on an American car.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, oftentimes you see one repurposed out of another type of car, but before the war, it was common to have accessory mirrors. You could, you would buy an accessory mirror, and this one is called the Hind View mirror. which which I really like, and so it's in a 5788 station wagon, and I gotta say it's charming, and it's part of the car. I'm not taking it out.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it. I like the Hind View, the official Underpowered Hour Hind View mirrors.
Hind View mirrors
on the Underpowered Hour store.
It's
Ike,
just
what's
a
your
sticker.
favorite?
It's just a sticker of a butt on a mirror.
Hind View. It is a view of a hind.
Yeah. So,
there you go. Ike, what is your favorite Land Rover accessory for this week?
My favorite Land Rover accessory, which, I just realized has been a long time favorite, but I just came to the realization that I have to have one in every car, is a squeegee. I got to have a squeegee in my car. Mm-hmm. It's related to the mirror, windscreen, got to see where you're going. And the Land Rover heaters, traditionally, I would say, are pretty anemic. That little Smith's round heater or the previous generation Clayton heater. I don't understand how the British live on an island that's foggy and cool and
like 100% of the time.
100% of the time. And they can't figure out how to make good windshield wipers or a good heater. And so the squeegee solves both of those problems. So if you Rain-X the outside and you squeegee the inside, you can actually see where you're going, which... Yeah, I gotta say it's huge, and also every time I do it, every time I see myself like from a third person perspective squeegeeing the windshield of the car, I think, God, I'm stupid.
Well, I'll tell you that the Defender is no better, and when we are not so much here because there's no moisture in California anymore. We've done away with that as a civilization now. But back in Canada, it was always muddy, and I would have the squeegee in the car with me and just reach out the window and squeegee mud off the windshield because the wipers don't do anything. So I would just squeegee it off the window from the outside, and that works pretty good. So yeah, that's a good accessory. That's a really good accessory, the squeegee. So get yourself a squeegee with a rear view, with a hind view mirror attached to it, and you're really set for all situations. You're pretty much good to go. Well, maybe we'll have to add that to the Underpowered Hour store as well. The hind view squeegee. Hind view squeegee. You can squeegee things behind you then. Like you don't even have to turn around to do the rear window. You could just look in the mirror and do the squeegeeing.
That sounds like somebody's going to hurt themselves. We are not responsible for that. Our insurance does not cover that.
On-site squeegeeing. Then we'll come to your house with our mobile squeegeeing unit. So finally, Ike, Land Rovers in the movies. This is a hotly requested episode or movie that has been requested at least a time, if not several times. I
have gotten at least 30 requests to the point where I can't even open them anymore.
Can't keep up with them anymore. The mail is flooding into the Underpowered Hour mailroom. The mailroom staff are starting to complain that we have yet moved to email, but we're just not 100% sure yet. I don't know if that technology is sticking around.
It's a fad.
Yeah, we'll see. So Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, will some say one of the more famous Land Rovers in the movies, which is, I mean, I guess it was a very popular movie. I guess that's okay. But the Series 2A 88-inch car that they used for that film and brought nearly to ruin. What do you know about that car, Ike? Where is it? Do you know?
Well, I would say they ruined a series of cars for that movie. I think there are a series of series. They were all short wheelbase 88 wagons. I think they were prepared by one of the Land Rover restoration companies on the East Coast. They kind of dug up some, crappy Land Rovers out of their junkyard, and with a little bit of Hollywood magic, they painted them all to match and got them running, or at least rolling for the various scenes that they used in the movie. But they used, I want to say, at least 4 series Land Rovers, maybe 5. One of the shops that I worked for when I first started working on Land Rovers, when I was way back in high school, they bought all of the vehicles after the movie was made. And if you haven't seen the movie, there's a few famous scenes where the title character or titular character is driving around. I can never pass up any opportunity to say titular.
So you only have so many, so you have to take them when they come.
So he's driving, and he actually rolls it like 17 times into a parking space, and it lands perfectly. And it's a comedic element in the film, and it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. There's also one point where the tropical top is flapping back and forth, and
which happens.
Maybe one of the doors or something. Yeah, it'll happen.
Which happens.
Yeah, just have it peel up on you.
Doesn't one get run over by a monster truck too? I think at one point.
At some point, yeah. I mean, it has a rough ride, but it is. I mean, it's a really famous. That's a big movie, and that is a famous use of a Land Rover. A lot of people recognize the car from that. Film,
they do. Yeah, they do. It was a popular movie at the time, and they've even made like little miniatures or little models of the cars from that movie. Not that there were one car, but there were several. But at any rate, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, a little bit of crude humor and some Land Rover destruction. One of the vehicles was fitted with a pyrotechnic cannon underneath it, so that it could flip over. As it was driving along, as if Land Rovers need help with that.
Yeah, they don't need any help. It's a piece of telephone pole that they don't really do that anymore, but they certainly back then used to shoot a chunk of telephone pole out the bottom of the car, which would cause it to flip over. And nowadays it's a specialty hydraulic pneumatic hydraulic thing, and it can flip a car over into the next space sitting right beside it. It's absolutely amazing and quite high in the air.
We should get some of those and fit them to some cars, and when people push their horn button, it just flips them over.
It just flips over. It's the ultimate practical joke, As soon as those people come out of the full body cast, they are gonna very, very funny, good spirited. So, yeah, that's cool. I like the Ace Ventura. Jim Carrey's Canadian, of course, so we're required by law, by Crown law, to mention that.
Part of your citizenship, I believe.
Yeah, anytime someone is Canadian and another Canadian is talking about them, you need to point out the fact that they are Canadian. That is the rule that we all live by.
Do you have a handshake?
So. There is a handshake, but I can't share it with you.
I think
treason.
I think I've seen it, and it's really less of a handshake and more of a tickle, isn't it?
It's a little bit. It's a little bit of a tickle. Yeah, it's a little bit of a tickle. I mean, if you're doing it right. Yeah, it's nice. That's why Canadians are always so happy.
The old Canadian tickler.
The old tickler. That's for a different episode. So if you too would like to get your own Canadian tickler, head to the underpoweredhour.com, where you can find great products like you can get the Ike Goss worn Underpowered Hour t-shirts.
Yep.
Still some special edition stickers available, but I have to tell you, they are moving fast.
Flying off the shelves.
They are flying off the shelves. There's magnets available. And keep checking in, because we're always adding new and more ridiculous products to the Underpowered Hour shop. So please feel free to get in there and shop around. we are going to do gift cards for Christmas because one person asked me for a gift card.
Yes.
So I figured out how to do it. So if you have a coworker, a loved one, perhaps someone you put into the hospital because of a car flipping practical joke, and you want to make it even worse, consider an Underpowered Hour shop gift card. That's the great way to tell somebody that you really don't care for them. You really,
I'm going to get one for just about everyone on my list.
Everybody on my list.
Everybody on my list. I didn't say which list, but they're
for my own stuff.
They're going to get
stuff on my websites. Yes, they'll also get an autographed picture of me. Everyone, my mom, every year likes an autographed photo of myself, and so will everybody else. So we're going to send those out. Getting ready. Get on our Christmas list.
That's great.
Early and often.
That's great.
Why not? Why not? All right, Ike. Well, it has been a pleasure, as always. Some very exciting stuff coming up in the future, some neat interviews, much magic and delight coming into the Thanksgiving and Christmas season, the holiday season, if you will. And, it's been a lot of fun. We'll see you next week.
All right, Stephen, you're a gentleman and a scholar. I'm looking forward to it.